In this video, we are forecasting an unusual winter storm across a good portion of the U.S. The National Weather Service has started expanding their winter storm warnings ahead of what could be a very significant snow, ice, and wind event over the next few days. The forecast is tricky, but we're going to lay out all the details so you can stay ahead of this thing. Welcome back, y'all. Ryan Hall here with the weather forecast. As you guys could probably expect, there's a lot to cover in this video, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. But please, before I jump into this, let's all slap that like button for the YouTube algorithm so we can spread this information out to more people. Hit the subscribe button and let's start talking about the weather. All right, here's a look at the latest watches and warnings from the National Weather Service. If you're in a pink box up here, you're under a winter storm warning. The purple is going to be a winter weather advisory, and then of course the blue is a winter storm watch. Now, just like I said yesterday, I think the National Weather Service is going to expand these warnings down to the south a little bit more, and you'll probably see them starting to pop up over here closer to the East Coast as we go later on into the day. Whether you're under an advisory, a watch, or a warning right now, if you are inside of this area, we are expecting a very impactful major winter storm that will be happening over the next couple of days. Let's start talking about the snow portion of the storm right now. All right, we're going to start off with the NAM 3-kilometer model. This is what the radar could look like as we go into the future. And of course, if you want to keep up with the date and time, that's going to be listed above my head in Eastern time because that's where I'm from. So around 11 a.m. today, this is what the radar could look like. We're going to have that heavy snow heading down to the south. It's just now getting into central portions of Iowa here. It's been snowing for a while here in southwestern portions of Minnesota. And we might start off as a little bit of a rain-snow mix or freezing rain in and around the Nebraska and Iowa border. But that's quickly going to change over to snow by the time we get into this evening. 6 p.m. this evening, pretty much the whole state of Iowa is going to be experiencing some very heavy snow. Of course, we're going to have that heavy snow on the eastern side of Nebraska as well. And we're going to have some of this snow working into extreme western portions of Wisconsin and Illinois. Remember, the further east you go over here, the more dry air there is. So here we are at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And as you can see, the storm hasn't moved much, okay? It's moving kind of slow as it goes down the central portion of the U.S. here. But the closer the storm gets to the Gulf of Mexico, the more warm air there is to work with. And you can literally see that warm air feeding into the storm and really interrupting our snowstorm in Missouri. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of Missouri, especially in central and western portions, are, you're going to see some heavy snow. But it's going to start off as rain, and that's going to cut into your totals big time. We're going to start to see that snow breaking out in a lot of southeastern Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, and Arkansas, okay? I think Arkansas, you're in kind of like a good spot here to see some isolated higher totals of snow. Oklahoma and Kansas, the further east you go, the better, but I think the vast majority of you guys are just going to see snow showers and very, very light accumulations. But let's pull this forward a little bit, and you can see what I'm talking about. All that heavy Gulf moisture is just throwing itself right into the Arkansas area, and whenever that cold air really locks in here around 7 p.m. on Saturday, we're going to be talking about heavy snow, especially in and around the Jonesboro area. But it is absolutely a mess over here where a lot of places in central Arkansas are going to be seeing some rain. There'll be some freezing rain, and that's just going to be a very difficult situation for your local weathermen there in Arkansas. Don't give them too much of a hard time. Let's look at those snowfall totals here. Once again, pretty much all of Iowa is going to be buried in snow, at least more than 6 inches of snow, unless you're way over here in the far eastern part near Cedar Rapids where that dry air is. Just a couple inches if you're in extreme eastern Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And then once again, Arkansas, you are just in a weird position where somebody around Harrison could end up with, 10 inches of snow. And then just to the south and west near Fort Smith, we're talking about an inch maybe. Little Rock, we're talking about an inch or two. And then Jonesboro might be a place that sees 2 to 4 inches. It's very tough to forecast Arkansas in this specific situation. In Arkansas, there's not a lot you can do to prepare for 2 inches more than 4 inches or 5 inches. There's not a big difference there. If there's any milk and bread left, go get it if you're in Arkansas, okay? Just in case. If it ends up just raining, have you a nice milk sandwich. Okay, shifting our focus down here to the southeast. Once again, focusing on snow here. You can see that transition over to snow is going to happen here near Memphis and western Tennessee around 11 p.m. on Saturday, okay? So when the sun goes down and we're really working into the overnight hours, that cold air on the surface is going to allow the rain to change over to snow, and it's going to be heavy at times there in Memphis, okay? All the way up through Jackson, Tennessee. Even Nashville is going to see some heavy snow. But like I mentioned yesterday, we're dealing with old, cold air here, all right? This storm has brought down some Canada air with it, and the old, cold Canada air is fighting with the Gulf of Mexico moisture and warm air. We're going to start to see some problems in western and middle and even eastern Tennessee where it's going to be snowing heavily, and then all of a sudden it starts raining, and then it snows, and then it rains, and then you get freezing rain, maybe a little bit of sleet, and then it goes back to rain, and then snow, and a little bit more rain, and a little bit more snow. It's almost impossible to give you an exact breakdown of how this is going to play out. As you can see, as we get into around 9 a.m. on Sunday, we're still dealing with a huge mess over here, but we do see heavy snow breaking out in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina into Virginia there. Here in Middle Tennessee, this is going to go one or two ways. You're going to end up with a bunch of rain, you're going to end up with some minor ice accumulations, or you're going to get buried with snow. Because even though the vast majority of the energy here is going to be a mess, as this moves off to the north and east, once again, on the backside, when we start to get a little bit of new cold air back in here, we are going to see a very quick transition to all snow, and depending on how long this sticks around, we could see some pretty good accumulations here, okay? And once again, we're seeing the snow advance a little bit further to the north and east in Virginia and West Virginia. Now, here's an interesting little tidbit in the eastern Tennessee region, eastern Kentucky, extreme southern West Virginia. There's a lot of our energy, a lot of our moisture that's going to be causing the snow is coming from the south and east, right? And a lot of that moisture is going to get wrung out on the mountains. So the moisture kind of hits the mountains and then it convects and then falls as precipitation, and there's not a lot of moisture left to go past the mountains. So it's very possible, especially in this region right here, that we see a lot of nothing, or at least significantly less during the heaviest portion of the storm. Okay, this is when the heaviest snow is supposed to be falling, right here when you're next to the low pressure system. But I see a big old Appalachian snow hole here. Okay, to see any further into the future, we have to lower our resolution here on the NAM 12 kilometer. Snow's going to be breaking out into southern portions of Pennsylvania and into the panhandle of Maryland there around 7 p.m. on Sunday, and that is going to advect off to the north. But this model in particular, the NAM, is having a real hard time figuring out what's happening right here in the central portion of the storm, because we are going to have such a strong low-level jet moving that warm air in over cold air. This is traditionally where some of the heaviest snow would fall, but the NAM is showing just like a big hole forming here, maybe some dry air coming in around. So yeah, if we look at the upper levels of the atmosphere, you can see some dry air down here that tries to make it into the central portion of the storm, which according to the NAM model is going to kind of ruin the snow totals here for a lot of people on the eastern side of the Appalachians. And then of course, this is as far as we can go out right now. We'll update you if you're north and east of this line here. We'll update you tomorrow. But yeah, like I've been saying for days, after this thing starts to go up to the north and east, it's a freaking mess, man. Honestly, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's not very often that you see something this frustrating, man. Here's the snow totals from this model in particular. And remember, like I said, the NAM model here has a really hard time figuring out whether this portion of the storm is going to be rain or snow or freezing rain or sleet. And then, of course, it's also having a hard time figuring out whether or not we're going to have that dry air infiltrate and then lower our precipitation totals. The heaviest snow is going to fall over here on the northwestern side, so that's a pretty good snow for Pittsburgh up into western New York, southeastern Ohio, a lot of West Virginia, eastern Kentucky here, and then the eastern portion of Middle Tennessee gets buried with snow according to this model. And the Euro says, hey, no, on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains, we're not going to have dry air. In fact, this is where we're going to have the most moisture, and this is where we're going to see the highest totals for snow. And we're talking about over a foot of snow through a lot of western North Carolina, and then of course into the Virginia area here, West Virginia, up into central PA, a big snowstorm here, and then some really respectable totals all the way up into upstate New York. And then of course over here in the Great Lakes region around Chicago, Michigan, Indiana, this storm hates you guys, okay? It's literally doing everything it can to purposefully avoid you. And here's a look at the forecasted snow totals from the National Forecast Database, which is once again a very good one to look at. This is very conservative. It could definitely be a lot more than this, but this is pretty much what I would be comfortable putting on a forecast map. A big 2 to 4 inches from northern Arkansas into middle Tennessee, maybe 3 to 6 inches from eastern Kentucky into West Virginia, and then into southeastern Ohio, 6 to 8 inches in the purple and pink over here, and then 6 to 12 inches along the Appalachian Mountain spine on the eastern side there from North Carolina all the way up into the panhandles of Maryland and West Virginia. Okay, so if you're expecting snow, I think you know what you got to do now to prepare. It is time to go get the milk and bread if you think that's necessary. But now we got to talk about that ice. Okay, so there's 2 areas where we're concerned about potential ice accumulation that could maybe lead to power outages and stuff like that. That's going to be over here right around the Kentucky and Tennessee border, and then over here in South Carolina and North Carolina. Let's watch this play out on the simulated radar, and once again, we're going to be focusing on the ice this time, and really the heavy precipitation, the freezing precipitation is going to start breaking out around 5 a.m. on Sunday, okay? We are concerned about some ice happening around the Nashville area, up into the south central Kentucky area, but this is not as certain as down here, okay? So I do think that snow is going to be your biggest concern in this portion of the country, but down here we're really worried about the ice, and it's going to start there in northeastern portions of Georgia all the way over to the coast of North Carolina around 5 a.m. And then as we go into the future, the ice and the sleet and the mess down here is just going going to expand big time in coverage. And you might be thinking, Ryan, you're crazy, okay? You weather people, you're dumb. I looked at my weather app, and it's going to be like 28 degrees or 30 degrees when you're saying it's supposed to be freezing, raining. We all know that it snows when it's below 32, and that's true. The surface temperatures down here where we are expecting our ice storm, they are going to be pretty cold, okay? You're either going to be right at freezing or just below freezing, which normally that does mean that you would see snow. But what's happening here is that in the mid-levels, we have this big jet streak, this big inflow area of warm Gulf air moving into the South Carolina and North Carolina region. So you've got all this warm air moving in, but the cold air that's on the surface right now doesn't want to leave because it has to go over the Appalachian Mountains here. We call this phenomenon cold air damming. Let me try to draw this for you, okay? That's the ground. This is the cloud, right? It's got like precipitation in it. This is the mountain, okay? Here's you, a resident of Charlotte or somewhere around there. And here's the cold temperatures that you feel, okay? Like everywhere inside of this is like cold. And this is where we see that warm air coming in, okay? So the warm air is coming in, like it wants to move the cold air out of the way on the surface, but the mountain over here is blocking it in. And I'm running out of colors here, but anyways, you get the point, right? The precipitation comes out of the clouds, it melts here, it becomes raindrops in this warm layer of air because above your head, remember, it's probably 10 degrees warmer than where you are right now. And then those raindrops continue to come down, and then they enter the cold air or the freezing air, but this is such a thin layer that it doesn't have time to freeze into a snowflake or a sleet pellet, so it hits the ground as a raindrop, and it's like, holy smokes, it's 28 degrees, I gotta freeze. So it freezes on impact. And that's what we're gonna be dealing with here through a lot of South Carolina and North Carolina, all the way through the middle of the day on Sunday. According to the 3-kilometer NAM here, we're talking about a general, quarter of an inch to half an inch of ice through a lot of the areas that we just talked about, with an emphasis on South Carolina and Georgia over here. If we look at the 12-kilometer NAM, you can see that bullseye is definitely still over here in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. But this whole thing is a mess, and it takes the ice accumulations all the way up into Virginia, into the DC area, even Baltimore. But it's the only model that's showing that. The Euro model makes the most sense to me, and it kind of keeps a lot of the ice down here centralized to Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and a little bit of Virginia once again. And this one actually shows some places right here around Charlotte, maybe even approaching over 3/4 of an inch of ice, which is, let's hope that doesn't happen. And then the Canadian model has it even a little bit further south there, and really focuses the heaviest totals in central South Carolina. So this is another one that's really hard to forecast, but if you're in the pink here, I would definitely go get my milk and bread. Once again, here's what you can expect if we do get this kind of ice, okay? And another thing to consider here is the wind speed. Obviously, if you have heavy weight on trees and the wind's blowing, it's going to make the situation worse. I'm thinking we're going to be around the 15 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts in and around this area while the storm's going on. Okay, so if you end up with 1/10 of an inch of ice to 1/4 of an inch of ice, some isolated or localized utility interruptions are possible, typically only lasting a few hours. Roads and bridges may become slick and hazardous. So this is going to be the vast majority of everybody that gets impacted by this ice storm here. However, once again, we do have some places that could experience some ice accumulation over 1/4 of an inch all the way up to 1/2 an inch. And this is where we're going to start to see scattered utility interruptions. Roads and travel conditions may be extremely hazardous due to the ice accumulation. And I think that this tier is kind of going to be like the worst of it. However, it is possible, like we saw in some of the models, for some people to see up to 3/4 of an inch of ice. And with those 15 to 25 mile an hour winds, this is going to be very isolated. This is not going to be the widespread expectation here, but in some places we could see numerous utility interruptions with some damage to main feeder lines. Tree limb damage could be excessive, and outages could last anywhere from 1 to 5 days. If you've never been in an ice storm before, they are serious. So if you have a generator, do whatever you need to do to get that ready. Get your milk and bread and all that good stuff. And we're going to hope for the best, okay? I think that a lot of places are just going to see that 1/10 of an inch of ice to 1/4 of an inch with isolated power outages that last maybe a half a day or something. But, it never hurts to prepare for the worst. All right, last but not least, let's go over all the other impacts from this storm. We're going to see heavy rain breaking out down here in the deep south on Saturday around 6 p.m., okay? okay? And this is probably going to lead to some isolated flash flooding problems. These are thunderstorms, okay? Especially the further south you go, you're going to hear that lightning, you're going to hear that thunder. You're not going to hear the lightning, you know what I mean. And if you get 2 or 3 of these really juicy thunderstorms moving over you, it could cause some flash flooding down there, with 2 to 3 inches of rain expected through a lot of Alabama. And then as we head into the overnight hours and early morning hours on Sunday, we are expecting maybe some severe weather moving into Florida. Here we are at 7 a.m. right around Tampa Bay, points north there. We're going to see some heavy storms moving onto the shore with straight line damaging winds possible. Okay, this is a strong storm, guys. It's not just a regular snowstorm. This is a big time extra tropical cyclone. So we're going to see that lower level jet kind of really kick up the winds and maybe even cycle some of those down to the surface all the way into eastern and southeastern Florida by 1 p.m. on Sunday, where severe weather is going to be likely from this. Heavy rain will be expected from Savannah, Georgia, all the way up into the outer banks of North Carolina. Additionally, very strong wind gusts up to 50 or 60 miles an hour are going to be possible during this time. Now, as this thing goes up the East Coast, it's going to explode and it's going to get a lot more intense. We're going to see some of that ice and freezing rain mix in here around Washington, D.C. and Baltimore before it switches over to pretty much all rain. And we're going to have a very impressive squall line of maybe, once again, severe thunderstorm type winds moving through the Delmarva area into New Jersey. And then, of course, all the way up into the Long Island area as well. This is going to be a very strong line of storms with heavy rain, lightning, thunder. Once we get up here, we're going to be talking about maybe hurricane force winds, which makes me kind of concerned not only for the isolated possibility of wind damage, but coastal flooding. I talked about this being a possibility several days ago, and now it's looking like it's definitely going to be a thing where we see hurricane force wind gusts over the ocean here, just moving a lot of water towards the coast. I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing some moderate coastal flooding around the Long Beach area. And then this gets a lot worse as it goes off to the north and east. Around Cape Cod, and especially in the Rhode Island area near Newport, we're talking about 80 or 90 mile an hour wind gusts out here on the ocean, once again blowing right towards the coast. So we are going to see some coastal flooding there. And this is going to continue all the way up and maybe even cause problems up here in Maine and Nova Scotia. Look at that, nearly 100 mile an hour wind gust out here. This is like a hurricane or a tropical storm in the wintertime, baby. Very unusual and just hard to forecast storm. Man, this feels like it was a long video. I don't know if it actually is or not, but dang. I want to say an extra special thank you to our members today. Love all you guys. Also, if you didn't know, I created a new channel where I post clips from my live streams. I've got a couple cool videos up there already, so make sure you go check that out. It's called Ryan Hall Clips. And of course, I will be back here on YouTube tomorrow, but if you want to get updates from me between now and then, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, that's the place to go, okay? So I'll see you over there, or I'll see you right here in the next one. Goodbye.